Hola, buenas tardes, buenas noches para todos y todas. Mi nombre es Patricia Gabrieli, yo soy la secretaria de la Asociación de Centros de Idiomas y les estoy dando la bienvenida a nuestra charla de hoy en el marco de la Semana de los Idiomas. Les comentamos que la Semana de los Idiomas es un proyecto que viene llevando a cabo la asociación. Antes lo llamábamos la Semana de los Idiomas porque era una sola. Ahora son 2 semanas y bueno, y estamos programando para poder extender el año que viene a más. Hace un ratito estuvimos degustando virtualmente las diferentes sabores y comidas y ahora también vamos virtualmente ya me comentaron, yo pensé que estábamos invitados a tomar algo, pero no, vamos a hacerlo de manera virtual. Así que nuevamente les agradezco a todos y a todas la presencia y las dejo con las anfitrionas que nos van a comentar y van a charlar un poquito de la historia del vino aquí en la Argentina. Muchas gracias a todos por participar y están invitados a todas las charlas que vamos a tener hasta el 2 de octubre, que es cuando termina de la Semana de los Idiomas. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Patricia. My name is Paula. I'm the academic coordinator at Intercultural, and I'm super happy today to introduce Betiana Antonietti, one of our star teachers here at the Institute. Betiana holds a bachelor degree in tourism. She's a university teacher and has a vast experience in wine tourism, not only as a professional, but also because she's the 4th generation in a family of wine producers here in Mendoza. She is in charge of the subjects enoturism and the culture of wine and wine production for foreign students in Programa Puente at Universidad de Congreso. So welcome, Betiana, and we are in your hands.
Well, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I'm really, really happy because I'm going to talk about what I love the most, wine and history. And as Paula said, I was practically born inside a winery. I'm the 4th generation of winemakers here in Mendoza. And we have a joke in our family, and we always say that we have wine instead of blood in our veins. And it's my passion. My dad is a winemaker. I was going to be a winemaker, but then I went to the United States to do my last year of high school. So I decided to take a turn in my life, and I started to study tourism. So I hope I can give you and show you the passion that I have for this subject. So I brought a presentation, and let me just move this out of the way. There you go. And I'm going to talk about the history of the winemaking in Argentina, and especially of Mendoza, because, well, I'll tell you later. So let's start. So this is kind of a little review of what we're going to see. We are going to talk about the different periods that the history of the winemaking has here in Mendoza and Argentina, and the influence of the immigrants. We have basically the history divided in 4 periods. The first period goes from 1561 to 1767. The second period is also divided in 2 halves. The first half goes from 1767 to 1810, and the second half from 1810 to 1910. And then the third period goes from 1910 to 1990. Right now, we would be living the 4th period that started in 1990, and it is still going on. So before getting into the presentation and the history, I'd like to ask you through Mentimeter presentation, where are you from? Are you from Buenos Aires? Are you in another country? Where are you from? Where are you watching us? I'd like to follow the link that they're gonna put you in YouTube, so you can answer where you're from, if it is from Mendoza, Buenos Aires, and we're going to see the results here in the screen. A ver. Let's see. Okay, I guess we have to wait a little bit more for the answers. Okay, we have Luján de Cuyo, Argentina in general, Mendoza. Okay, so far Argentinian people. Anybody else that'd like to tell us? Where are you from? More people from Mendoza. Good. Esa. A lot of Mendoza people, right? That's good. All right, so this is going to help you a lot. You're going to learn a little bit more about your own history related to wine. All right, thank you very much. Let's keep going. Oh, I think we had another answer. England. Oh, we have someone from England. Good, welcome. Welcome, more people from Mendoza. All right, that's great. So we're going international. That's great, welcome. All right, so let's start from the beginning. So let's see the first period that goes from 1561 to 1767. And I'm not sure if you know it, but I'm going to tell you. The first city that was founded here in Argentina was Santiago del Estero. Right here on the left, you have the map of our country. This is Argentina, and we're looking at the northern part of the country. Santiago del Estero is located right in the center of the northern part of Argentina. And why this city was founded first? Because actually our Spanish people were coming from Peru. In Peru, there was a viceroyalty, and those Spanish people were coming from Peru to Argentina, and they founded Santiago del Estero in 1553. And with them, they brought the first vines that arrived in Argentina. And do you know who brought them? Because although I'm talking about the conquerors, I'm talking about Spanish people, I'm talking about Peru, the ones that brought the vines to Argentina, not only to Argentina, to most of the American continent, were the Jesuits. And you're going to wonder why. Well, it's the answer is very, very simple. They brought it because they needed the vines and they needed the wine for their service on Sundays and Saturdays for the mass. And they needed to have the blood of Christ. So that's why they brought the plants from Europe, and they were the ones that planted them and started to work in the vineyards to make their own wine. After almost 10 years, in 1561, Mendoza was founded. Our Spanish people were coming from Chile. The Spanish from Peru, they went down to La Capitanía General de Chile, and then they crossed the Andes, and they got to Mendoza. So Mendoza was founded in 1561, and along with the conquerors, the first vines arrived to this territory. Not only the Spanish, the Jesuits brought the first vines to Mendoza. So I'm going to do a little parenthesis here because I need you to understand why Mendoza is such a wonderful place for growing grapes. I'm going to give you like the ABC of the whole alphabet of growing grapes in Argentina and in Mendoza. There are 4 factors that have to be together in order to grow grapes and to grow them healthy and such a wonderful quality that we have here in Mendoza. The first of them is the temperature, right? So in order to grow healthy, the grapevines, they need about, or between 9 to 22 degrees Celsius. Mendoza has a lot more temperature than that, but it's more important actually the difference of temperature between day and night. So let's say sometimes in Mendoza, we can reach in summertime the 40 degrees Celsius, and then at night, the temperature drops a little bit. Of course, it is still hot, but there's a 15 or 20 degrees Celsius of difference between day and night. And that's very, 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 very important. Do you know why? Because during the day, with the temperature and the sun exposure and many other factors, we get the sugar degree, we get the tannins, the polyphenols, which are wonderful ingredients in the wine later on. But then at night, when the temperature drops a little bit, the plant feels like it needs to protect itself from the cold weather. So what it does, it creates thicker skins. And this is very important because in the case of the red wines, the color of the wine is located in the skin. If you open a white grape and a red grape, both of them are white in the middle, in the center. The only difference is the skin. So in order to have, or I would say it the other way around, the thicker the skin is, the thicker in color, or the deeper in color that wine is going to be. So since we have such a big difference of temperature during day and night, that skin gets thicker and we get better color. That's the explanation, the simple explanation why our wines are such deep in color. The Argentinian wines are known for having very, very deep colors. All right, let's go and move to the sun exposure. Mendoza is known for being the land of the sun and the good wine. We have sun a lot. So a plant, a grapevine, to grow healthy needs about from 1,200 to 1,800 hours per year of light. Well, we have a lot of that. So we can accomplish that factor. We have it for sure. The sun exposure is important also because of what I said about the temperature, but the sun exposure during the day, it creates the sugar content inside the berry, inside the grape. That sugar at night, when the temperature drops a little bit and the sun is not longer there, concentrates. So every day is the same process. So if we get the sugar content, tannins, polyphenols, and many other things, and they concentrate at night. So they are created during the day, they concentrate at night. So why the sugar content is so important? Because during fermentation, later on, when we're going to make that wine, that sugar is going to turn into alcohol. So the higher content of sugar that you have inside the grape is going to be the higher content of alcohol in the wine. And that would be a second explanation why our wines are so high in alcohol content. In Argentina, it's illegal to add alcohol to our wines. So all the alcohol content that we get is totally natural. And it's built, in a way of saying it, by the sun exposure and the sugar that we have inside the berry. Then let's go to precipitation. It doesn't rain in Mendoza. We get about 250 millimeters of rain a year. We are a real desert. We get no rain at all. I mean, 250 millimeters, it's probably what they get in London in one day. And the grapevines, in order to grow healthy, they need between 500 to 600 millimeters per year. So they need a little more of what Mendoza can give them, which is fantastic. It is fantastic because we can control the amount of water that we can give to the grapes. We are at all times, we're looking at the plant and we know exactly if it needs water or not. In other wine countries of the world, it's a little more complicated because maybe it rains or the underwater is really close to the surface, so the plant is drinking a lot of water. So we do actually something here in Mendoza that is called the water stress, that is actually not watering the plants a month before the harvesting. So those sugars, those polyphenols, those tannins, they concentrate and they are making better wines by the time of the harvesting and the production process. But today we're not talking about wine, maybe in another time, but right now we're talking about the history. But I wanted to tell you why. Since 1561, these four factors were there. And the soil is the last one. Of course, we can be talking hours about the soil, but mainly what I want to tell you is that the soil in Mendoza especially is very special, and the vineyards, they need to drain. So the soil needs to drain the water because they don't need as much water. In Mendoza, there's a lot of drainage. Our soil is very rocky. We have different areas. And of course, I'm telling you again, this is the ABC of the whole alphabet of making wine. But Mendoza has wonderful soil for the growing of the grapes. So we could say that this is the paradise for the wine. And lastly, I'd like to show you, a ver si funciona aquí. This world map. And this is really important to tell, because if you think of the wine regions of the world, if you close your eyes and you think of the Northern Hemisphere and the wine regions of the world, let's do this exercise. So what do we think of? United States, Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, right? Look at this. They're all located between the same parallels, 50 and 30 north. And it happens the same in the Southern Hemisphere. So if you close your eyes and you think of the wine countries of the world, wine producing countries of the world, you think of what? Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, the south of Brazil, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. See them? And they are, most of them, of course, the main ones, located between the 30 and the 50 parallel in the south. And that is important because this is where the temperatures go from 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, more or less. See where it goes? And that's exactly what the grapevines need. And the same thing happens in the Northern Hemisphere. There's another division of the wine countries of the world, like the old world and the new world. We would belong to the new world since we are part of the new generation of winemakers in comparison with Europe, of course. All right, so let's go back to history. So by the end of the 16th century, the residents of this very small village that had about 60 neighbors, 60 families, were making 5,000 liters of wine. That's a lot of wine for that time. We're talking about the end of the 1500s. The first winery was founded by Mr. Alonso de Reynoso, who was coming from Chile. He planted a vineyard and started to sell wine to Buenos Aires. And I put this little map that shows the distance that he had to cross back then, the whole country from west to east. This period was called the Creole winemaking because it was made by the first Spanish that got to Mendoza. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. I know you cannot answer right away, but do you know why this period ends in 1767? We said it started with the foundation in Mendoza in 1561. And I was telling you that the first vines were brought by the Jesuits, right? Well, in 1767, the Jesuits were expelled from the American continent by the King of Spain, who was Charles III back in those days. So they had to abandon all their abbeys, churches, and monasteries, and everything that they had to abandon it, including the vineyards. So from 1767 on, there were other people that were in charge of growing the grapes and making the wine. That's why this first period ends in that exact moment. Let's go to the second period. As I told you before, we have, it goes from 1767, that was when the Jesuits were expelled, to 1910. We have a lot of years here. And it's divided in two halves. The first half goes from 1767 to 1810, and the second half from 1810 to 1910. So in the first half of the 17th century, at least 3 wineries were built, which together had a capacity of more than 130,000 liters of wine, and that's only in Mendoza. So we went in, what, 100 years, more or less? Or, yeah, more or less. We went from 5,000 liters to 130,000. That's a lot. As for the vineyards, it is estimated that the total cultivated area in the 17th century would reach around 20 hectares. At the present, we have, just in Mendoza, about 220,000 hectares of vines, so that's a lot. All right, we're gonna go to the first half. So we are in the colonial times. This the winemaking process here was very, very rudimentary, and actually there weren't real wineries built. They were just a room aside of the house, isolated with thick adobe walls and the local cane roofs to maintain the temperature, but they weren't really buildings by themselves. They were part of the house, so the people that would grow grapes, they would have this special room to make wine. According to the census of 1739, there were 500,000 vine plants in Mendoza. Up to now would be about 70 hectares. With that grape production, one could produce 400,000 liters of wine. So see how it's growing really, really high, the production of wine in Mendoza back in those days. Let's go to the second half, from 1810 to 1910. Since they were making so much wine, they started to have surplus, and they started to expand, and they started to sell wine to not only to other provinces, but also to, for instance, Paraguay. In the 18th century, we were sending 90 shipments a year, which was about 250,000 liters. That's a lot. That's a lot for the time. We're talking about the 1700s. And this is kind of very important for me to say, because contrary to what has been repeated until exhaustion by the official history in Mendoza, before the arrival of the main quantity of immigrants to Mendoza, there had been an important wine industry with big wineries for the time. So we started to make wine the first day that the Spanish started the city here, which was in 1561. So we've been making wine for a long time. It didn't, I would say that it had like a boom when the immigrants came between 1857 and 1920, but it already existed. There was already an industry when those immigrants came. And I decided to put this because I love San Martin. He's my favorite person in the world. And he was our governor between 1814 and 1817. He was the governor of the province of Cuyo. In those 3 years, he organized the army that crossed the Andes on horses and mules to set Chile free. And then they went to Peru and set them free. And San Martin was an Argentinian general, and he had so many wonderful things, but among them, he also took with him and the army 113 mules that were carrying 113 barrels of wine. He believed that giving wine to his soldiers was really important. So it's like, if I liked him, I even like him more because of that. It's like, great, give him wine, give everybody wine. It's like my dad, you know, he's like, are you feeling sick? Drink wine. Does your leg hurt? Drink wine. You know, his solution for everything is wine. I kind of agree right now. All right, so after the independence that we had between 1810 and 1816, the independence of Argentina was in 1816. And when we broke the bonds with Spain, the industry started to grow in Mendoza. And there was a very important influence of the European immigrants. The 1897 census found that there were 15,000 hectares of vineyards and 400 wineries, which produced 28 millions of liters of wine. We're talking about millions now. In the next 15 years, the number of vineyards and wineries tripled to 1,100 establishments and 45,000 hectares respectively. That's a lot. And I'm so excited about this because you can see how it went like, wow, really, really high. And we started to make wonderful wine. In the year of the centennial anniversary, that would be in 1916, there was the production of 260 million liters of wine. So from a quantitative point of view, Mendoza was already a global wine power. All right. This was the second period, and we are supposed to go to the third period, but there's something that I love to talk about because I'm very passionate about it. And it's how the immigrants influenced the whole thing, not only the wine industry, but also our lives, and it's who we are. I come from both Spanish and Italian immigrants. A ver, voy a poner esto un poco más. I come from both Italian and Spanish immigrants, and it's like I love the way they got here and how they got here and how they made everything real when they got here. So this period, which is from 1910 to 1930, is also known as the European period. It has a lot to do because even though not all those important winemaking families that arrived in Argentina, not all of them got after 1910, most of them got here before this period. It was around 1910 that we started to make wine like in a different way, and it's called European period because since the grapevines were brought from France and Europe in general, the Malbec was brought in 1857, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, it's one of the slides there. They started to make high quality wine, and they started to compete with the high quality wine of the old world of Europe. All right, so let's go back to the topic here. So the immigrants started to come in significant numbers between 1857 and 1920. In those years, we got, in that period of time, we got 5 million immigrants. Approximately 50% of them were Italians, 36% Spanish, 14% were from other countries such as France, Russia, Hungary, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, and the other countries of Europe. And this is what I want to tell you. In 1911, this wonderful, because I put the name wonderful. The real name is Immigrants Hotel, or El Hotel de los Inmigrantes, is inaugurated. This is actually the 6th building of the Immigrants Hotel, because since 1850, they started to move the hotel to different locations, but this one in particular was especially built for holding the immigrants. You know, in the States, they had Ellis Island. Well, we had this in Puerto Madero in Buenos Aires. And I'm gonna show you this. Look at that. It was fantastic. It had a ground floor and 3 floors on top of it. And it could hold 3,000 guests at a time. It had 250 beds per room, 4 rooms per floor, and there were 3 floors because in the ground floor they had the dining room and the open spaces and then the common places. And it was part of 6 important buildings, all devoted to the immigrant service. So right across the street of this hotel, there were 5 more buildings. One of them was the Banco Nación, the national bank, where they could exchange their money. There was a luggage storage warehouse where you would put your luggage because it was not allowed inside the rooms. And most of the immigrants, they came with a lot of luggage. So they had to have a special place for that. Then a hospital that was actually the best hospital that we had back then in Argentina. The post office, so they could be in contact with their homeland and their family. And the labor office, that one has a special chapter. It was just fantastic what they decided. Now, this was all provided by the state of Argentina. And actually there was a wonderful organization about it. What they did is that before getting to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, to Puerto Madero, before even getting the ticket to travel from Europe to Argentina, you had to have a kind of visa. So you had to go to the consulate or the embassy, the Argentinian consulate or embassy in your country, let's say Italy or Spain or France, and you had to get a kind of a visa where you would present a certificate of good health, your criminal records certificate that you had no criminal records, and a couple of other documents. So after that, they would put you like a visa in your passport, and with that, you were able to take the ship to come to Buenos Aires. The government of Argentina also worked with many different shipping companies and ships and big boats and so on. And the government would make sure that those trips were kind of secure and healthy in a way. They wanted to avoid the diseases on board. The trip was between 15 to 21 days. And sometimes the cleaning or the ships were not clean enough and there were diseases. So what the Argentinian government wanted to do was to make sure that those immigrants were coming already healthy. So they didn't have to kind of cure them here, even though we had a hospital for that. So let's say that we were immigrants, we are immigrants and we just got to the Puerto Madero port. We would get off the ship, and there were 2 lines. You didn't have to do customs or go through customs because you already had everything. They would just write down your name. Hold on 1 second. So you could go to one line. There was a line that if you had family here in Argentina already, you didn't have to go through the Immigrants Hotel. So you would just go to wherever your family was. But if you didn't have family or you were coming with the idea of staying here and building a future, you would go to the other line straight to the Immigrants Hotel. And that's where all started. A ver si se mueve. No, se movió 2 veces. No, sí. These are some pictures. Pictures of the hotel. Some of them are old, some of them are new. This one on the upper part on the left is one of the common spaces. This one on the right belongs to the place where the luggage, the storage luggage was, the warehouse of the luggage storage. This is a picture, it's a new picture of one of the bathrooms. The hotel, inside of it, all the walls were with tiles or ceramic. And that way it was easier to clean, and it was a very clean place, like a hospital. A little warmer than a hospital, but the idea was to keep everything clean. Right here in the middle, we have the kitchen. On the left, we have the dining room. They could serve 1,000 guests per shift. That's a lot. And this is one of the rooms. They had this rooms with 250 beds, 4 rooms per floor. Right now in this, at the moment in this building, it's the Immigration Museum, and it's free, and you can go and visit it. And also they have different art expositions, and it's beautiful. And you can also visit it online. They have virtual tours. It's beautiful. It's just perfect. Well, let's talk about the services. So let's say that you were an immigrant that wanted to go through this whole experience. They would give you 4 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, tea in the afternoon, and dinner. You would be provided of language courses. If you didn't speak Spanish, there were people helping you to learn Spanish. There was a wonderful library, very big, in the ground floor, where you could get the books about anything you wanted related to Argentina, of course, like geography, history, Argentine culture. You could either read the books or go to the courses that they would teach you about geography, history, and Argentine culture. And also job training courses. If you didn't know how to do things, they would teach you to do it. Free accommodation from 5 to 7 days. They would think that, or they calculated that in those days, they were able to help you with everything that you needed, including job seeking service. They would make sure that you would get a job and would be settled. And of course, the Argentinian state would provide the transfer, a free transfer to the job location. Let's say that you got a job in Chaco. Okay, they would take you to Chaco for free. Yeah. This is a little video that has only the images. I hope you can see it well. And it's about the opening of this hotel and how people will get to the Puerto Madero port. These are original movies. And these people were getting to Argentina. They all came with hopes and dreams. And well, these are, maybe they are the people that are going to the inauguration because they look very good. They don't look like immigrants. But anyway, maybe they are not just getting off the ship. They're just, well. This is the view of the hotel. Beautiful. This was the dining room. This is great. One of the dorms or the rooms. And this is what I want to tell you a little bit. They had a lot of immigrants that didn't speak Spanish, right? And some of those immigrants, they came from their homeland knowing to do some agricultural work. Maybe they knew how to work the land or how to plant vineyards or how to work with corn, I don't know. So since they didn't speak Spanish, the Argentine government outside the labor office, they had this kind of exposition of different machinery related to agriculture. And those immigrants that didn't speak Spanish, and instead of saying, oh, yo sé cómo plantar un viñedo, they would show them a vineyard right in there. So that person would be able to point at that and say, I know how to do that. So according to that, they will help them to get to the place where that person can work, right? Because she knows how to work there. And see that we have a windmill here. So they had different kind of machinery. I think it was just fantastic. I'm very passionate about the Immigrants Hotel. It was just a wonderful idea. So these are part of the buildings that were around the Immigration Hotel. These are the cars or the buses that we used to take people to their jobs or to their final locations after staying at the hotel. Going to different places. And I think this is it. Wait, vamos a la siguiente. All right, so I already told you a little bit about what I'm going to speak right now, but basically is what happened during this third period of the Argentine winemaking history. So we talked about the immigrants, we talked about the immigration, the Immigrants Hotel, that beautiful place in Buenos Aires. But let me tell you something. In 1853, the governor of Cuyo, who was Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, that later on he was a president, asked Mr. Puget, who was an engineer, to bring vines from Europe. And that was the breaking point of the winemaking in Argentina. That was the moment when we introduced the fine varietals into our country, which was in the previous period, in the second period, not in the third one, as we know it as the European one. We started to grow those grapes, but then it started in the third period is when we actually did it better, you know, with another mind and another point of view. Those immigrants that probably many of those passed by the Immigrants Hotel and they ended up here in Mendoza, they were the responsibles of the growth of the industry, of the winemaking industry in Mendoza. They were the ones that built this beautiful, huge wineries that still exist, or they still work, or they were part of the history of Mendoza. So even though we started to make wine in the 16th century, by 1910, we started to make it better and we started to compete with the wines from Europe and to make better quality wine. So to me, this was the most fantastic period. It is actually when my family came to Mendoza. I'm going to show you just, a ver si se mueve. Ahí está. Just a couple of numbers, not a lot, because I didn't want to go into too deep about this, because it's not history was the topic of today. So in 1926, in Argentina, we were drinking 62 liters of wine per person. In 1932, it went down to 32 because of the depression, and then actually impacted in the wine industry as well, even though it was in the Northern Hemisphere. In 1970, we were drinking 90 liters of wine per person. That's like a lot of wine, a lot of wine. 1976, 83, 1991, 55. Right now, if you want to know, we're drinking about 18 to 20 liters of wine per year, but that's because of the, we have so many other choices now. We have, beer, we have cocktails, we have soft drinks, we have a lot of other options. Back then, it was just wine or water, right? Or maybe beer, but not so many options as we have them today. And this is the production of wine in hectoliters. And if you can give it a quick look, between the 60s and the 80s, it was when we produced the most. Then it started to go down a little bit. And this is about families. This is the families of Mendoza. They all arrived from Europe. They are very known here in Mendoza. I'm sure that if you're from another city, you have heard of them. Some of them still make wine, like Lopez, for instance, or Escorihuela, not the family itself, but they still have the brand. Giol, Gargantini, Norton, Pulenta, Arisu, Tomba, Filippini, Bianchi, o Bianchi, me va a retar mi profesora de italiano. Bombal, Suter, González Videla, Venegas, Catena. I highlighted Filippini because this is my family. This is the family that arrived in Mendoza, and they were the ones that created a wonderful winery. And because of the Filippini, actually, the Filipinos, they had a winery, and the Antonietis, that is my last name, Antonietti, my great-grandfather, he was a winemaker. He was a winemaker that went to study in Udine, in Italy. He had a degree in winemaking. And his idea was to go to Australia. And actually, his whole idea was to go from Italy. He would stop a couple of days here in Mendoza and in Argentina, sorry, and then he would take another ship to go to Australia. In the ship from Europe to Buenos Aires, he met a lady that he fell in love with, and she was from Mendoza. And he said, okay, I'm going to Mendoza then. And as a winemaker, he was actually the first winemaker of the Lopez winery. Lopez was founded about in 1897, I think, or so. So my great-grandfather, Ferdinando Antonietti, he was a winemaker, and he was the first winemaker of that winery. And then in the other side, the Filippini, they started to work the land. They had potato fields in Valle de Uco, in the area where the winery Atamisque, actually their property was where the winery Atamisque is right now. And they would plant potatoes, and they got the money out of the potatoes, and then they started to go into the winemaking business. So the winery existed until the 70s, 1970, that they went bankrupt. And then my dad, in the 90s, more or less, he opened his own family winery that is called Bodega Familia Antonietti, that I'm part of. And that's how my winemaker's family history is. Bueno, speaking of which, I'd like to know, I have another Mentimeter for you. Let me just go back and, oh, we have people from Ecuador, from Buenos Aires. Oh, great. And the other one is immigration. I'd like to know if you have European background, if either your grandparents or great-grandparents were immigrants, and from where? I already told you my personal history. So I'm half Italian and half Spanish. My mom's side, both of them were from Spain, and they were related to the wine industry. Italy and Spain, very good. They were all related to the wine industry also because they were all pickers. So they would work in the fields, and also they had some vineyards. So, you know, we are all really related to one way or the other. The people that live in Mendoza, we're all related to the wine industry. Either we know someone that has a vineyard, or we have a vineyard or a winery, or we make wine, or we like wine, or we all have that kind of experience, right? And background. All right, more people from Spain and Italy, Portugal and Netherlands. That's interesting. France. What else do we have? That's great. Italy, again, Italy is getting bigger. So we have a lot of, well, actually, then we're very good with the statistics, right? The immigrants, most of them were from Italy, and then Spain, and then the rest of the European countries. All right, that's good. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Well, thank you very much for participating. And I have, I think, one more to see. And this would be the fourth period. I don't want to go really deep on it because to me, it's another topic, you know, to talk about the nowadays wine and how we do it right now. But I wanted to show you a couple of things and show you how important Mendoza is in terms of wine production. We produce almost 70% of the whole wine in the country. Then we have San Juan that produces almost 30%. And then the rest is among all these little cities. Cafayate is located in Salta, that would be, and Chilecito is in La Rioja. These are other wine regions in Argentina. And even though we have a 0% here, it's because it's like 0.0 something that actually they make some wine, but it's not as important to show more than 0%. But look at this, Mendoza is the producer of wine in the country. And these are the wine regions of Mendoza. Most of them have or accomplished these 4 factors that we were talking about. As you can see, most of the wine regions are located right to the Andes, right next to the Andes. So we are very much protected by, and we can control the water as well. And then we have the Patagonia area that is a little more humid and cold, and they make wonderful, for example, Sauvignon Blancs or Pinot Noir that are very, very, they need like a cooler weather conditions. And then in Salta, they make the best torrontés in the world. It's a white grape, it's beautiful, it's just fantastic. It's a floral wine more than a fruity one. It's just, I love it. It's one, actually, I think it's my favorite white. And in Mendoza, of course, we make a Malbec. Malbec is a French variety. It's originally from France. And we brought it to Argentina, and we found out that in Mendoza, the weather conditions and the soil were perfect for the growing of it. So right now, it is the variety that represents us in the rest of the world. So if you think of the different wine regions of the world, you're going to think of a specific representative variety. Like, for example, if you think of, I don't know, Spain, it would be the Tempranillo, right? Or the Rioja wines. If you think of the States, it could be either the Sauvignon Blanc or the Pinot Noir, depending on which area you're talking about. If you think of Uruguay, it would be the Tanat. If you think of Chile, it would be the Carmener. If you think of Australia, it's going to be the Shiraz. If you think of New Zealand, the Sauvignon Blanc. So it doesn't mean that we don't grow all the wine regions in the world. They grow all the fine wine varieties of grapes, and they make wonderful wines. But there's always one that stands up and represents the area. So that's why we say that the Malbec is the representative wine in Argentina. All right, and we make it here. We are, in terms of a country, we are the 5th producers of wine in the world. We produce about 18,000 million of hectoliters per year. That's a lot of wine. And we are the first producers of concentrated must. The concentrated must, or mosto concentrado, is just to give it a simple explanation, would be like a grape juice that is used to sweeten different products. You know, the Tetra juices, for instance, you know, the orange juice that you buy in the Tetra pack, they are sweetened, most of them with natural sugar, which comes from the concentrated must. Instead of adding white sugar to it, they use it for that. So we are the first providers of a concentrated must to the United States, China, and some other countries that I don't recall right now. But we are the 5th producers of wine in the world. We're after France, Italy, Spain, and the United States. So that's a lot. And lastly, but not less important, a ver, no se movió. A ver si se mueve ahora. A volver. Ahí. And just a little bit about tourism. I would love to talk about tourism forever, but we have no time. So I just brought one slide. And why are we so important? Because we're part of this global network that is called the Great Wine Capitals. And it's an organization, it's an international organization that is actually related to wine tourism. And we are the 8th wine capital of the world. Mendoza is right here, as you can see. And we are in this wonderful network along with Bordeaux, Rioja, Porto, San Francisco, and Napa Valley, Valparaiso, and Casablanca. So we are, with all these wine countries in the world together, in wine capitals, but this is all related to wine tourism. Actually, every year they have a contest that is called the best of, and they choose the best of the wine tourism in those different wine capitals of the world. So this is it. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat over there. And I'd like to thank you. This is my name, full name, email address, if you'd like to contact me. I hope you have enjoyed this chat with me and that you have learned a little bit. And I hope I had been able to show you the love that I have for this topic.
Okay, Betiana, thank you very much. I think that was amazing. I'm living in Mendoza, but I think sometimes I don't know enough about the place where I live. And the things that we drink as well, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're not just drinking. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the comments that we have here in the chat.
Okay, great.
At the very beginning, I just wanted to say first that there are people from Sao Paulo, Brazil, Ecuador, Buenos Aires. Well, we have people from Córdoba, well, from Mendoza, of course. Yes, and well, we have some students cheering for you, so that's good.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
And we're going to see if you have any questions.
Okay.
This is the moment for you to ask any questions. So we're going to wait a little bit and see if there is
no problem.
any doubt.
Or maybe I was so fantastic that there are
absolutely
no questions.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Okay, so well, as Betiana already said, maybe you can show again your email. So if you have any further questions, if you want to know a little bit more about this amazing topic, which is our history and the history of wine, well, you can contact Betiana, and I'm sure she will give you a lot more material to learn about this.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so there are no further questions, so
okay, great.
We are going to finish here. Betiana, thank you very much. Thank you,
Oh,
Sea,
thank you.
Fabio, and all the support, yes, from Intercultural as well. And well, hope to see you in the next webinars and in the next of the events that we have here at Semana de los Idiomas. So thank you very much, and we see you next time.
All right, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Fabio.